any resources that Visa and Immigration provides you is not considered immigration legal advice and is just simply guidance for your application. So first, just explain a little bit of what OPT is. OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. It's a benefit for all F1 students that are eligible. It's basically what it is work authorization for employment in your field of study. So this work authorization allows you to work off campus for either a paid or unpaid position. And really any work, and when we talk about employment, it means that's work that is performed or a service performed that's in exchange for money, tuition, fees, supplies, room, food, and other benefits. So sometimes work doesn't necessarily mean, or employment doesn't necessarily mean a typical job. It can still, certain positions that you might not get paid for can still be considered employment. And you are not supposed to be working until you've received proper approval. So we're going to go and explain how you get that approval for OPT. So for OPT to apply, you do not have to have a job. That's definitely a big misconception that a lot of people have. So you can apply for OPT before you have a job lined up, and then you can apply for jobs while your application is being reviewed by USCIS. Any employment that you do under OPT, once you do get the approval, it has to be related to your major. So if you have multiple majors, it can be related to either one of them or both of them. And if you just have one major, it has to be related to that major. It does not, it doesn't matter if it's related to minor. So if you have a minor and the job is only related to your minor, it would not qualify for OPT. So Visa and Immigration issues an I-20 recommending OPT. This I-20 is filed along with the rest of your application. It's either mailed or filed online to USCIS. They're the ones that will be reviewing your application and approving or denying it. If approved, you'll receive what's called an employment authorization document. It's a card that grants you up to 12 months of employment authorization for OPT. And the purpose, as I stated, is to gain practical experience in the field of what you studied. So there's different types of OPT. There's pre-completion. This takes place before you complete your program, your academic program at Stony Brook. There's post-completion OPT, which takes place after you've completed your program and after graduation. And then there's the STEM extension, which is 24 months additional work authorization that could potentially be available to students who graduated with a STEM degree. Program completion date is defined as the end date of your program of study, and it's not necessarily the same as your graduation ceremony. So today we're really going to talk about post-completion OPT. So this is studying after your program end date or after you graduate. So this allows students to engage in employment directly related to their program of study after the program end date on their I-20. Students must work full-time, which for immigration purposes is 21 hours or more to avoid any unemployment. And you're only permitted one OPT per education level. So if you're right now pursuing your second master's and you did OPT after your first master's, you would not be eligible to do OPT again. And only post-completion OPT can be extended under STEM extension. So that's just to explain, like, you can't do the STEM extension after from pre-completion OPT, only post-completion. So the eligibility and requirements, you must have maintained your F1 status. You have to have studied for 1 academic year. That means that you had to be in your F1 status for 1 academic year. Because of COVID, a lot of people have started from abroad and done all different scenarios. So it might not be as clear, but whatever the start date, 1 academic year equals a fall and a spring semester, or a spring and a fall semester, it doesn't matter the order. So you have to have been in F1 status for a fall and a spring semester to be eligible for OPT. You have to complete all course requirements to graduate. You have to have sufficient GPA. This is the same for graduation, 2.0 for undergrads, 3.0 for graduates. You have to resolve any incompletes or NR grades from prior semesters before you can apply. And you should have a valid passport that's at least 6 months, that's valid for at least 6 months in the future. And you can't apply if you've done more than 365 days of full-time CPT. As I had mentioned earlier, you do not have to have a job to be eligible to apply for post-completion OPT. So there's very strict deadlines and timeframes of when you can apply for post-completion OPT. The first is you cannot apply 90 days before your program completion date. So your program completion date is the end date on your I-20. If you're graduating this semester, the fall 2021 semester, that graduation date would be December 17th, 2021. So you can apply 90 days before that date, or 60 days after that date. That's 60 days is considered your grace period, so you can still apply for OPT during your grace period, but the caveat is that USCIS, who you're applying to, needs to receive your application within that 60 days. So you have to, as we're going to discuss the processing time, you have to kind of plan ahead. You can't really do everything on the last possible day. So this is how the processing time works. Once the post-completion OPT checklist has been submitted in accessVIS, you should allow VIS 7 days to review your application on accessVIS. Then once that application is reviewed, and you submit your application to USCIS, it takes them approximately 3 to 5 months to review and approve OPT. And this process really with USCIS cannot be expedited. It's only under very special circumstances that it can. And I really, to be honest, have never seen any students qualify for that expediting application. So this is the application process in a little more detail. So part 1, or the first step, would be to request an I-20 recommending OPT. That comes from our office, from Visa and Immigration. So how you would do that is you log into accessVIS through Full Services, and you'd complete the post-completion OPT checklist. You would need to upload your I-94, your passport, your F1 visa. For undergraduate students, you also have to get a major minor progress review form completed by your major and your minor advisors. This form is linked on the in accessVIS on the e-form, and it's also on our website. It just tells us, you know, that you are in your last semester and are on your way to graduation for your major and minor, that you're really completing all your degree requirements. Once this form is submitted for undergraduate students, it will go to your general academic advisors so that we can confirm your GPA completion of SBCs. And then for graduate students, it's going to go on to your academic department so they can confirm graduation and your academic standing. So on the e-form and accessVIS, you also have to choose your OPT start date. So you will indicate to us what your preferred start date and end date will be. This start date needs to fall within your 60-day grace period. So that means it would be starting the day after your OPT end date, or I'm sorry, your I-20 end date, up to 60 days after that I-20 end date. You can pick any start date within that 60-day period. And then your end date would, for most people, would be 12 months later. So in some circumstances, you might have a shorter time for OPT. One reason is if you did pre-completion OPT, then you would have a shorter time based on how much a pre-completion OPT you did. The other scenario is if you did full-time CPT or curricular practical training, you may want to reach out to your VIS advisor for advice. In some scenarios, we have seen that USCIS has looked at full-time CPT as part of the total 12 months of practical training that is given to F1 students. And if you go over those 12 months of practical training, they have either been questioned about it or denied future immigration benefits like future applications, for example, H-1B. So it's something you can discuss with your VIS advisor if you maybe are in that scenario. So once you've selected your OPT start date, it's really difficult to change it. So be really diligent in how you or when you are selecting and what you put on the e-form. If USCIS can't process your application for OPT by the start date that you request, a new one will be issued to you. So it's a requested start date. It is not a guarantee that you will get that start date on your EAD card. So if they are reviewing your application after the start date that you requested, they'll pick a new one for you. And it's usually around the time that they're reviewing your application is the start date. And unfortunately, you will not know that date until you get your EAD card in the mail. So this is a little graph to kind of explain how it works, because there's a lot of different days and numbers and everything that I've talked about. So it makes it a little bit easier to explain. But as I said, the earliest you can apply is 90 days before your end date on your I-20. The latest is 60 days after the end date on your I-20. You get a total of 12 months of OPT. You pick a start date within the 60-day period of when you're after your I-20, after the end date on your I-20. And then after your 12 months of OPT, you do get your 60-day grace period. So your 60-day grace period kind of pushes back. So if your end date on your I-20 right now, if you look and it says like, 2024, that will get updated when you apply for OPT to be shortened to the last day of the semester that you actually graduate. So this is a specific timeline for fall 2021. So if you're graduating in fall 2021, it can kind of help you with the actual dates that you'll be looking at. So the earliest date that you can apply is September 18th, 2021. That's the earliest date we can put in the recommendation for you for OPT. That date is a Saturday, so VIS is closed on Saturdays. So the earliest that VIS would be starting to issue the I-20s for OPT is September 20th, which is the following Monday. So as I said, the end date for your I-20, if you're graduating this semester, is December 17th, 2021. You can pick a start date for when you want to start working, and the start date will be on your EAD card. That'll be the earliest start date you can pick is December 18th, and the latest is February 15th, 2022. So those are just something, so those are, how you kind of can picture everything for this year. And if you're applying next year, it might, or I'm sorry, next semester, it might be just helpful to see how this graph works with all the different dates and when you can apply and what's the start date and all of that. So to complete the post-completion OPT checklist, the first step would be to request the I-20 recommending OPT. Once you submit that, as I stated, it goes to your academic advisors. So it's going to take them some time to review that form and submit it. And once they submit their part, it comes to the VIS office. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for it to be reviewed by your academic advisor and by your VIS advisor, you can review the OPT application review module. This module is goes step by step, every single thing you need to do to prep your OPT application. It goes through the I-765 application, which is the actual application from USCIS to apply for employment authorization. It goes through all the different documents that you need to prepare and upload. And then it also goes through the application process and how to maintain your status while on OPT. It's really informative. So what you'll need to do is once you do that module, it takes about an hour, you'll upload your completion certificate to the OPT checklist. And then this will notify the VIS advisor that you've done your due diligence of doing the application review, and they will, once approved and issued, they'll send you a link to download your I-20 recommending OPT. And just so you all know, this is also the time when you will be charged $100 international student fee to your solar account. So how that works is once the I-20 recommending OPT is issued, you get charged $100. It doesn't automatically go into your solar account, so you won't see it right away. But if we do issue an I-20 recommending OPT for you, you will be charged that $100. And usually for fall applicants, you wouldn't actually see it on your solar account until the winter term. So these are all the documents that you actually have to prepare for your application. USCIS has allowed 2 different ways to file your application, either paper or online. So sometimes there's different ways to prepare your application or different documents you need to prepare. So a cover letter that's linked, we have that. You'll only do that for the paper application. The fee for the application is $410. If you do the paper application, you can pay by credit card by filling out a form, or you can do a money order or check. If you do online, you can pay with credit card, debit card, or you can do it straight from a US checking or savings account. 2 passport style photos that should be no more than 30 days old. You shouldn't be reusing photos from visa or passport applications. They should be new ones. The form G1145, that's to notify you when USCIS has received your application. It's only for the paper application because it's not necessary for the online application. The actual form I-765, this is the actual application for USCIS. If you do the paper version, it's a PDF that you can type in and then print and sign it. You can't do digital signatures, or you can actually file the application online, going through the each section on their website. Additionally, you'll need the Form I-20 recommending OPT. You can't apply for OPT without that I-20. You'll need all copies of all I-20s that have ever been issued to you, either from Stony Brook or any other institution. Copies of your ID page and expiration page on your passport, copy of your US F1 visa, if you have one, a copy of your electronic I-94 that you can get on the Custom and Borders website, a copy of the emission stamp that you got at the airport in your passport. If you did get one, if you didn't get one, then you just don't need to submit anything. And then if you have previously gotten an EAD card, you would provide a copy of that. So to file your application, you either should first make copies of all the documents you need or save the electronic copies if you're filing online. You need to be physically present in the US to file, even if you're filing online. You cannot be outside the US to file for OPT. If you're doing the paper application, you'll mail the application to the USCIS lockbox, and you should request tracking for when you mail your application to make sure it got there. And then if you do the online, you'll create an online account and submit the application through the USCIS website. USCIS must receive your application within 30 days of the date that your OPT I-20 was issued. So that's the OPT, that's the I-20 recommending OPT, whatever that date of the date that your advisor processed your request and issue the I-20, USCIS has to receive your application within 30 days of that date. It's really, really important. As I said earlier, it takes them about 3 to 5 months for them to process your application. So it is a long period, but you do not need to have a job to apply. So you can use that time, that processing time, to look for a job so that you can have a job once you are approved for OPT. And once you apply, you'll get a receipt notice that includes a receipt number. That's the receipt number for your specific application. You can track your application on USCIS's website. Once you are approved for OPT, you'll receive an employment authorization document. That's a card. It will have a start date on when you can start working and an end date of when you have to stop working. Those approval dates, they may be different than what you've requested just based on USCIS processing time. You cannot work until you receive your EAD card, and you can only work within the time frame that they give you. And as I said earlier, this includes volunteer training, internships, orientation, anything that's associated with employment. It should only be in the time frame that they approved you for. Employment during OPT, it has to be related to your academic program. So it has to be related to what you specifically studied, and it should be full-time, which is 21 hours a week or more for immigration purposes. If you notice any errors on your EAD card, which does somewhat frequently happen, so it's important for you to review your card when you get it, you should contact your VIS advisor immediately to see what you should do next to get it corrected. You are allowed to be unemployed during OPT for a certain amount of time. You cannot be unemployed for more than 90 days under OPT. So how that works is once you have your EAD card and the start date has begun, if you do not start a job on that specific day, your unemployment clock starts ticking. Until you get a job and report that job in accessVIS, your unemployment days are continuously being counted. So it's really important that not only you are actively looking for a job, but also that once you get one, you report in accessVIS. You don't start accruing unemployment days until the start date on your EAD card has begun. So even if you apply now, you get your card maybe, for example, in December, but you don't have a start date until January 31st, you won't start accruing unemployment days until January 31st if you don't have a job that starts January 31st, even though you have your card 2 months prior to that. So working less than 21 hours a week in a qualifying position is considered unemployment. So even if you do have a position that's 10 hours a week, you're still accruing unemployment days. And anytime outside of the US, it could potentially count towards your unemployment days unless you're employed during that period and on an authorized vacation leave by your employer, or you're traveling as part of a requirement for your job. So anyone that exceeds those 90 days of unemployment, not only are you not in valid F1 status anymore, but you definitely could be denied future immigration benefits because you have exceeded the limitations that are allowed for unemployment. They also are auto terminating student SCIVIS records. So your F1 SCIVIS record, immigration record. SEVP will auto terminate if you don't, if you go over the 90 days of unemployment. So they are keeping track and they count them. And if your F1 status and SEVIS record is terminated, then you're, not here under legal immigration status, and you should be departing the US as soon as possible. So it's really important that we recommend keeping proper documentation of every job that you do, which is that verifies dates of employment, job description, your title, supervisor contact information. Examples of this could be pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, and offer letters. This just kind of verifies the employment you did have if there is any question about it, or if you did potentially forget to report employment and your status got terminated, but you were actually working, at that point, we would need verification of you working and whatnot. So there's different types of employment that's allowed. You're definitely allowed to have multiple employers while on OPT. It's all the employers and the jobs you do have to be related to what you studied, but you are, there's no maximum amount of hours that you can work on OPT. It's just a minimum of 21. And you can use multiple employers to make up that 21 hours. You can do short-term jobs. This happens a lot with like performing artists that do gigs. You can do a work for hire, like a contract relationship. You can be self-employed and have a business, and you can work through an agency or consulting firm as well. So the opportunities are definitely, there's a wide range of what you can do on OPT. You can also be doing internships, anything, even if it's paid or unpaid. As I said earlier, it does count as employment as long as it's related to what you're studying. You can connect what you studied in your degree to what you're doing at your job. So volunteer really isn't, volunteering is any job or internship whose original purpose was to be a non-paid position. If the job normally has a stipend and the employer agrees not to pay you for this work, this is not considered volunteer and is also a violation of labor laws, and it's not acceptable employment. So you can work as a volunteer or unpaid internship or unpaid intern as long as this doesn't violate labor laws. So that's something, basically if you're desperate for a job, employer says, yeah, I'll hire you for this job, even though normally we pay, but we don't have the money to pay you right now. So will you do it for free? The employer is violating labor laws, and you shouldn't get mixed up in that, and you shouldn't be taking a position like that. Volunteer work should be 21 hours a week, so that you're not accruing unemployment. It should be directly related to what you studied, and it should be reported, just like any other job. You should be able to provide evidence, like an offer letter, verifying the dates, the number of hours you're working. If a job normally offers a stipend and the employer agrees not to pay you for the work, this is not considered volunteer and is not acceptable. So sometimes students want to volunteer or work at SBU. This is allowed on OPT for paid or unpaid work, just in the same as volunteer. It should, if it's normally unpaid, it should be unpaid, or if it's normally paid, it should be paid. So you should, if you end up wanting to do that, you need to get an offer letter from the department chair or dean on letterhead that has all these descriptions and requirements. So this is really important. If you have a faculty advisor that wants to offer you a job, that's fine, but they need to run it past their department chair or dean, who will write the letter confirming this position. It can't come from a faculty advisor. So just a little advice when you go and look out for jobs, that some career etiquette and accepting jobs, because it really can be different in every country. So in the US, if you receive an offer, you can definitely continue interviewing with other employers before verbal or written acceptance of another offer. So as long as you haven't accepted another offer, you can definitely continue interviewing. Once you accept an offer, either verbally or in writing, you're really making a formal commitment to that employer. So you should be upholding that commitment. There's really no reasons except for like personal or family tragedy or things like that, you should, take back your acceptance of an offer. It's really kind of just unacceptable in the US workforce. So you want to be sure, if you're accepting an offer from an employer, that you're actually going to be working for them. Continuing to interview after you've accepted an offer is ethically wrong. There's no law against it. It's just one of those general cultural things that are ethnic, that's wrong. And you are held accountable for all of the above, regardless of the source from which I found that you found your job or internship. So Handshake or any of the other resources, they're not, responsible for any of wrong information or whatnot, or going back on an offer. So reporting requirements while you're on OPT, everything should basically be done within 10 days. That's kind of the number that you need to remember. So you should report your approval within 10 days, change of contact information, change of name, anything regarding your employment once you get a job, if your job changes, if anything, within your job changes, like supervisor information, if you end your job or your job is terminated, that all should be reported in accessVIS within 10 days. The only thing that does not get reported in accessVIS, as it normally doesn't now, is your address change. So that is still required for you to report while on OPT. You should be doing this within 10 days, and you'll do it through Solar. You'll have access to Solar for the rest of your life, so you will never lose access to that. So ways that you'll invalidate your OPT is if you start a new degree program, you can't be studying for a new degree while on OPT. If you transfer to another school, if you change or end your status, if you enter the US with any other visa than your F1 visa, if you violate your F1 non-immigrant status, you're unemployed for more than 90 days, and if you fail to complete your degree program by the end date listed on your I-20. And you can always contact your VIS advisor if you're thinking about any of these things, or if any of these things do happen, on what you need to do next. So failure to complete your degree program. So if you're applying for OPT now, you're telling me I'm graduating at the end of fall, but something happens this semester and you fail this class that you need to graduate. So what happens? You should contact your VIS advisor before the end date on your I-20. So if it's this semester, that's before December 17th. It's tough with timing because sometimes you don't know if you're definitely going to fail or not, but you might have some idea. So if you have any idea that there's any possibility you might not graduate, but from that on that date, then you should contact your VIS advisor. If you don't, and you don't graduate on that date, and your I-20 can't be extended after December 17th. So you violated your F1 status, and then your F1 status will be terminated. And not only will you have to then either apply for reinstatement, depart the US, but you also won't be eligible for OPT. So like I said, if you have any doubts, you need to contact your VIS advisor. And if you're not really sure if you're going to be able to graduate this semester, you should really make sure that you're going to graduate before applying for OPT, so to avoid any issues with graduation, because it can have really severe consequences. So when you're on OPT, traveling can always be a little risky, but it's definitely the most risky while your application is pending. I would not recommend traveling outside the US while your application is pending, because USCIS could deem it as abandoning your application. If you've received your EAD and your OPT has been approved, but you haven't found employment, it can also be risky about entering the US or re-entering the US, because then you're using your unemployment time, and it's only 90 days. So the officer at customs could be questioning you about why should they be letting you in the country to go work if you don't have any employment. So those are two scenarios where I really wouldn't recommend traveling on OPT. If you have your EAD card and you're working, or you have a job and it's all updated in your CVIS record, traveling is not as risky. You should of course, have all your proper documentation, but it's definitely not as risky if you can show that your OPT has been approved and you found proof of employment. So I'll just briefly talk about the STEM extension, because students do have some questions about it. So to be qualified for the STEM extension, you have to complete a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree. You have to be in OPT, working 21 hours a week or more for a US employer who is E-verified in a job that's directly related to what you studied. If you're not sure if your employer is E-verified, you can ask them. You'll have to upload an I-983 training plan and learning objectives that's completed by you and your employer. And it's to be eligible for STEM, there is like a specific majors that are eligible and who aren't. So that's on our website of where you can find if your major is eligible. It's tied to the zip code that is on your I-20. You can apply for STEM 90 days before your post-completion OPT ends. So for anyone who potentially is eligible for STEM, you would first apply for OPT, get your 12 months of OPT while you're on OPT, then you apply for your STEM extension. You can't apply for it all together all at once. So you get 12 months of work authorization on OPT, then an additional 24 months of work authorization on the STEM extension. And for the STEM extension, there is a $200 international student fee that is put on your solar account. Income tax. So we at VIS are not tax professionals. So we can't really give you advice on how to file your taxes, but we can tell you that you definitely do need to file taxes, even if you haven't earned income in the US. We recommend getting a tax accountant for assistance. And we do bring someone on campus who can kind of go over the basics for F1 students specifically. And help them file their taxes. These are the dates for the next seminar, which is in March of 2022. So you have a lot of time. But they're really helpful in guiding students on how to do their taxes because it's pretty complicated. We strongly recommend that students continue their health insurance after graduation. So that can either be through Stony Brook, you can continue your health insurance that you have with Stony Brook, or you can get health insurance through your employer if they offer it. But we really, really strongly recommend that you don't have time periods where you don't have health insurance. If any of you have gone to a doctor in the US, can be very costly, and health insurance is can really help with those costs. And you know, you never know what can happen. So just to recap and finish up before we get to any questions, for the OPT process, the first step would be to complete the OPT checklist. You'll speak to your academic and major advisors to confirm your graduation. Then you can put in your request in OPT and accessVIS. You complete the OPT application review module and upload the completion certificate. Once you've done that, you can, the VIS advisor will send you the I-20 recommending OPT. Once they've reviewed your application and, confirm that you're eligible for OPT, as well as when you've completed the OPT application review. So always allow 5 to 7 business days for that. You'll prepare your OPT application. The first step would be to download, print, and sign the I-20 that was granted to you, and then complete the I-765 and prepare all the other application materials. You'll file your I-765 online. If you do, you'll file it either through the paper application where you mail it to USCIS, or the electronic online application. USCIS must receive that application within 30 days of the date your OPT I-20 was issued, or your application will be denied. So just to let you know that if you do file after that 30 days, they will accept your application, take the fee, everything. And then once they're reviewing it, they will deny it. So you won't find out that denial until months later. So it's really, really important that you file it on time. And then you'll report your report in accessVIS all the updates. So once you get the receipt notice, you'll report that in accessVIS. And then once you get the approval on your EAD card, you'll report that in accessVIS. Some reminders is that you have to request your OPT either 90 days before your program end date or up to 60 days after the program end date. So you have about a 5-month period to apply. Once your request for OPT is approved by VIS, the I-20 program end date or the expiration date will be shortened until the last day of the semester you'll graduate. The I-765 application's got to be receipted by USCIS within 30 days of the I-20 being issued, and it can't be after more than 60 days after your program end date. So you can't, they need to receive it by the end of your grace period. So there's 2 different time frames depending on when you're applying. Your employment while on OPT must be directly related to what you studied and appropriate for your degree level. And you can't work until you get your EAD card and the start date on your EAD card has begun. You have to work within the dates that you were authorized for. and you should not be accruing more than 90 days of unemployment while on OPT. So these are the list of all the advisors. The caseload breakdown is on our website. So you can always, if you're not sure who your advisor is, you can always contact them. My name is Allison Issa. I have a caseload with students who have the last name starting with K or L. So you can contact me if you're within my caseload. And that's kind of the end of the presentation. So if anyone else, if you have any questions, as Margaret said, you can put them in the Q&A box, and I can go through and answer them.
Great, thank you, Allison. We don't have any questions yet, but as they come in, I'll read them aloud. Okay, so our first question is, can students request an old I-20 if they've lost it?
Yes, we have a form on accessVIS called request for document copies, I believe is the title. So you can fill out that request there. We ask you to just put the dates of the I-20s that you have, so that we can kind of figure out which ones you don't have and then provide you copies of the ones you don't have.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? We'll give another minute. So we have another question. When can we apply for the SSN?
That's a great question. So if you've never been issued an SSN before, you can apply while within the I-765 application. So, so if you've been issued an SSN before, you can use that SSN like for maybe CPT or on-campus employment. That's your number. It's only for you, so you can use it while on OPT. But if you don't have one, then when you complete the I-765, they'll ask you if you've ever been issued an SSN. And if you say no, they'll ask you, do you want to apply for one? If you can definitely apply for one within the I-765 application. Many students do it and have had good success. Like it doesn't seem to be much of an issue. They've been doing it for a while now. So I would recommend doing it that way. And then what happens is you submit your application, and then usually within around 2 weeks after your OPT is approved and you get your EAD card, you'll get your SSN card in the mail to the same address where your EAD card is being mailed to.
All right, next question. Do you recommend the paper application or the online application?
It's hard to have a recommendation. The paper application obviously has been around for a long time. That's how students have always done it. The online application has, I think, came out in April, I want to say, of this year. So it has been around for a couple of months now. We've definitely had students do it. There's a lot of convenience to it. It's a lot, especially with, you getting your I-20s electronically. There's the layout of the online application is very good. So I definitely, I know some students have really liked that option, and I've seen students get, not have any issues. Like they've gotten their OPTs approved, no problem. It's nice. There is this chance with paper applications that you could get your application rejected and sent back to you. Some common reasons would be if you forgot to sign your I-765, if your fee like didn't go through for whatever reason. What are some other ones? If you like forgot to check something off on the I-765 application, they can reject your application, send it back to you, and you have to reapply. They don't take your fee in those scenarios, but with the online application, those reasons are all kind of voided because you can't submit your application if you forgot a crucial answering a crucial question. Your fee, if it doesn't go, like if your credit card doesn't go through, they give you another chance to do it, use a different card, things like that. So there are a lot of conveniences to it, but I will say it doesn't speed up them processing your application. So if you do it paper or online, the processing time is still the same. You don't get a quicker approval online versus paper. So there are pros and cons for sure. But if you're gonna do one, just only choose one. Don't try to apply both ways.
All right, we have a couple more questions left. How should a student proceed if they apply for the SSN on the I-765, but then shortly after are offered an on-campus job, which requires the SSN?
That's tough because it's hard to kind of change it after you've done it. You can potentially try to mail something to USCIS. Like once you get your SSN through your on-campus, you can mail them your social security copy and say like, please don't issue the social security. I got one through an on-campus job, and send like a letter of explanation. That depends on timing, but that could be an option. I would say the other option, you don't have to apply for your SSN through your I-765 application. So if there is a chance that you'll get an on-campus job, or you think you'll get an on-campus job and you'll apply through that, you can just say you don't want an SSN on your I-765 application. And then if it never works out that you do get an SSN this semester, then you can still apply for an SSN once your OPT is approved by going to the Social Security office with your EID card and applying that way. So it's not like if you don't apply through the I-765 application for your SSN that you'll never get an SSN.
Okay, thank you, Allison. And we have one final question. Can students speak to an advisor to review their completed Form I-765?
So we try to ask students not to do that because we've given so much advice on like step-by-step advice on how to do it that it's really at this point your responsibility, and we can't be liable for you for your application. So if you have specific questions about a specific part of the application, you're absolutely more than welcome to send an email to your advisor, but sending your entire application to your advisor for final review would not be appropriate.
All right, thank you. So that concludes the questions and our OPT presentation. I'll just hand it back over to Allison for any final remarks.
I think that is it, unless there's no final questions. Thanks everyone for joining us, and good luck with your OPT applications and for the rest of the semester.
All right, have a great day. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you.